it's fantastic to have you here today as we embark on this exciting journey together. Today's session will introduce you to key members of the program team, including our program director, Dr. Tom Lawrence, who will provide insights into the program and what to expect. You will also meet my colleagues from the program services team, Anushka Jadhav and Lisa Sainsbury, who are here to provide key information about your program journey. They will be available throughout the session to answer any questions you may have either in the chat or during the Q&A session at the end. So just some housekeeping notes for today's session. Please ensure to ensure a smooth and engaging experience. Please take a note of the following. Microphones, please keep your microphone muted unless you are speaking during the Q&A session or obviously the networking session later. Cameras, please keep your camera on if possible to foster a more interactive environment. And in terms of asking questions, please post your questions in the chat function and my colleagues and I will be happy to respond. Please use the raise hand function if you would like to ask a question during the Q&A. And in terms of timing, we are unable to answer all questions during this session, so we will make sure to follow up with responses afterwards. Okay. The agenda for today will start with a program overview. Dr. Tom Lawrence will provide an introduction to the program, and then you will meet the program team, Anushka and Lisa, who will share details on program support and logistics. Then I will provide a cohort overview and a chance for you to meet your fellow diploma participants. And at the end, we will have 5 minutes Q&A session, which will be an opportunity for you to address any remaining questions you may have. So we hope you find today's session informative and engaging. And now, without further ado, over to you, Tom.
Thanks very much, Sarah. Welcome, everyone. Really great to see you here. And I can see from the different kinds of shadows and lighting in different people's environments that this will be a different time zone for everyone. So whether it's good morning or good afternoon or whatever it is, welcome. Yeah, I'm Tom Lawrence, and I'll be the program director for the online diploma in strategy and innovation. And you probably already heard it referred to this way, but you'll often hear it referred to as DIPSI, which is the kind of local label for it, which in retrospect doesn't actually sound that great, but it is what it's kind of known by. So the Diploma in Strategy and Innovation is often kind of DIPSI for us in short form. I've been teaching on the diploma for most of 10 years, I suppose now, and I've been program director since we started the online program a year ago, and so I'll tell you a little bit about myself and background, a little bit about the program, and then we'll go into kind of the more of the structure and the sort of processes that you'll be encountering. As Sarah said, if you have questions, put them in the chat. This is a welcome session, so this should be informal. You should ask questions. There's also an orientation session, which will be only like this much more formal next week, but in terms of you'll meet more people in terms of program services and so on. But really do ask any questions you have. One of the challenges and opportunities in terms of doing online education is trying to break down, we've all been in a million Zoom and Teams meetings by now. And so we know that it's different to have these meetings with people you've met and know well, and rather than people you don't know well and are just meeting. And so one of our jobs, your job also, is to try and kind of break down the formality and distance associated with having online meetings and having a kind of Zoom education experience. And one of the ways you do that is by speaking up, by kind of infusing your interest, energy, personality into the meetings we have, which I know is very difficult to kind of demand, sort of do on demand. But whatever you can kind of bring to this is immensely, immensely appreciated and will be appreciated by everybody here. So that's my little plea. And so implicitly, that was a plea to Khalid and Joseph and Hamoud and Miriam, who have their cameras off. Now, I know there are sometimes good reasons people have their cameras off, and I can understand that. I'm not meaning to kind of, call you out and shame you. I'm just encouraging, inviting you in. Anyway, okay. Welcome, Joseph. Um, I've been here, I've been teaching in this program for about 10 years. I've been here for a little bit over that, 11 years. You can probably tell I'm not from England. I'm not from Oxford. I'm from Canada. I don't know if we have any Canadians here. No one's putting their hand up. Wow. Okay. Well, I'll be your resident Canadian. Um, so I came from the West Coast, from Vancouver, where I lived on the West Coast of Canada for about 20 some years, most of my adult life, and came here in some sense for the obvious reasons. The reasons people come to Oxford because it's a really extraordinary institution. It's it's not only a kind of extraordinary, fantastic university, but the legacy, the history it has make it, if not completely unique, then very, very distinctive, even in terms of global and old universities. It really is an extraordinary place. What we hope to do is kind of bring to you some of that extraordinariness, even though you won't be coming here physically. Um, just to tell you a little bit about myself, you'll meet me in much more, or meet me along the way many times. I also am the convener for the fourth module, the strategy and action module, and so you'll get to see me a lot in that fourth module. My areas is I'm a professor of strategy here in the business school, and I've been teaching strategy for 30 years, strategy and innovation. I kind of teach around strategy, innovation, entrepreneurship, organizational change to a certain extent, managing change and transformation. In recent, years, the last 10 years, focusing like everybody has on digital transformation particularly. And so that's an interest for me. My research is kind of around that area, but also focusing on how change and innovation happens, particularly in kind of hard to change domains. And so a lot of what I've done has been kind of at the intersection of different sectors, private sector, public sector, not-for-profit sector, um, particularly around hard to kind of deal with problems like addiction, homelessness, public health issues, a while ago, HIV/AIDS treatment, but then also professional services and the airline industry and the tourism industry. So cutting across both kinds of sectors and arenas. Um, I always tell people, and it's completely true, that this is my favorite program. Actually, I don't tell everyone this. I don't tell the MBAs this, but this is my favorite program to teach in. And it's because it really is extraordinary. I didn't really know much about it when I got here, 10 years ago, and then they invited me to teach on it, and I started teaching, and you slowly begin to realize just how extraordinary and special it is. And it's special for a whole bunch of reasons. One is because it's um, it's a diploma in strategy and innovation and a graduate diploma. And so what it allows is this really nice blend of kind of breadth and depth. And so you have four modules that cut across strategy, innovation, global, and strategy and action. And each of the modules has its own distinctive, not just focus in terms of content, but it has I think this year is completely true. People who have taught on this program for quite a really long time. And so they've developed an understanding, an orientation, a kind of attitude toward their area that they've really dug into over many years. And each of them has very different teaching styles. You'll see across the modules a lot of consistency in the sense that people are very interested both in the kind of intellectual and academic side of those topics, but are very, very practical. And at the same time, you'll see a lot of differences between the different instructors and the different leaders that you have. Your experience of it in terms of the topics will all on hand, you'll cut across these four very different topics. On the other hand, they actually add up to much more than the sum of the parts. And so it's a very thoughtful assembly of topics, issues, frameworks, cases, and so on that really should add up to something significant for you over the four modules. And it's, in some ways, the way I think about it is that the people who are on it are kind of executive MBA level, very experienced people who have a lot of contributions to make in terms of classrooms and their own experience across a really wide range of sectors and industries and geographies and personal kind of biographies. And at the same time, they're all interested in this common language, common set of questions around the intersection of strategy and innovation. And it's interesting. So when I started teaching strategy decades ago, it wasn't really strategy and innovation weren't a couplet the way they are now. And so they were kind of seen as two different things. You kind of studied or did strategy, or you studied and did innovation. These days, I don't think anybody would think of them as very separate. So if you do strategy, you've got to do innovation. If you're doing innovation, you have to do strategy. It's the only way they're sensible to kind of really think about them. And that's the point of this program. Um, the other thing that's really extraordinary about this program, and probably really real reason that it's my favorite, is because of the participants, because of you. The people who are attracted to do this program are exceptionally good. They have really strong backgrounds, they have really interesting things to say, and the combination of the different perspectives that emerge in the classroom make for really fascinating, kind of high energy discussions. People who are interested in this topic tend to be not only interested, but passionate about it, really engaged with their organizations, really trying to make a difference in their organizations, or whether they're entrepreneurs or working in the public sector or large corporates or small and medium enterprises. They want to do things in those organizations that make them different, accelerate them, amplify their opportunities, and so on. So for me, I'm not actually teaching you for quite a long time because I'm in the fourth module, but I'm already kind of excited about it. So, and the last thing I'll say, just in terms of what's really fun and exciting and interesting about the program, just at a very high level, is something I'm dealing with right now from last year's cohorts, which is the final integrative assignment. And it's a part of what makes doing a diploma different than doing, say, an open enrollment exec ed program. So the reason you would choose to do this rather than an open enrollment exec ed module or a set of modules is because you want to dig a little bit deeper and be challenged a little bit more. And we'll do that. So there'll be readings that aren't optional. You'll need to prepare some readings. Some modules have a lot of readings, some have fewer, but they're really not optional. They're really expecting you to show up prepared for class and ready to contribute. At the end of all that process, there's a final integrative assignment that cuts across all four modules and gives you the opportunity to dig into a question that you are specifically interested in for your organization, for yourself, for your career. It might focus on an implementation issue in your organization. It might focus on a potential merger opportunity that your organization has. It could be a whole variety of things. It could be a startup you're thinking about developing, an entrepreneurial opportunity. But the point of it would be to kind of marry together not all of, but a lot of the frameworks, ideas, concepts you've learned about or become more expert in over the four modules with your own set of interests to give you a chance to develop them. And it's, I shouldn't say this, but it's 6,000 words. And so for some of you, that'll be, oh my God, that's too many. For some of you, that'll be no problem. But 6,000 words actually ends up not being that much. And really ends up being just enough to kind of dig into an issue that you're really interested in. Okay, so I just want to really start by conveying my kind of excitement that for me personally, that being a kind of program director on this kind of program has, and it is very, very sincere. I've lost track of where we are in slides because they've now moved ahead is that the second slide?
Yes, so that's the second
Okay,
slide
great.
down.
So I will
Just
introduce them then.
yeah.
Thank you. Excuse my cough. Um, so I mentioned the four distinct modules with different teams teaching them. You're going to meet Richard Whittington next week and then have him for the week after that. I won't go into great depth with anybody, but Richard is a professor here in strategic management at Said. He's been here a very long time. He's probably one of the most expert people in the world, literally, on the evolution of strategy as a discipline. He recently published a book called Opening Strategy, which was a history of strategy, both academically but also practically, including the evolution of major consulting firms, the evolution of strategy in major corporates, and looked at it over a very long period of time, 40 or 50 years. And he takes an approach to strategy, which is, I think, exceptionally um, strong in terms of the combination I was talking about, both intellectually rigorous and eminently practical. In fact, the approach he takes to strategy, he's kind of started a whole school of the study of strategy, referred to as strategy as practice, which is the idea that strategy isn't just a bunch of abstract ideas and frameworks and concepts, but strategy is something people do. And we need to understand how people do strategy in organizations. And he has led that for the last probably 15 or 20 years, that evolution of that academic area, which has become now a major international area. Uh, the second module is focused on innovation, and it's led by Professor Mark Ventresca, who is also a very long time Oxford Professor of Strategic Management, and Professor Victor Seidel, who is now at Babson College, who previously was here at Oxford, but he's also an associate fellow of the school. And Mark and Victor, um, I kind of think of the heart of the program in many ways. They're exceptionally good um, educators. They have a very exciting, novel, creative approach to thinking about innovation. Again, very practical, but very intellectual. And they'll really challenge you. They really have a kind of way of thinking about innovation that they'll pull you into it. And you will be kind of slightly overwhelmed by it at times, but it's also very exciting. Mark, for instance, does work on things like the space industry, and so he's become very interested in the space. Well, he doesn't call it an industry. I think he calls it economy, the space economy, because it really is more than one industry. Looking at everything from kind of SpaceX to small satellite companies to spinouts from Oxford that are doing space-related things. Mari Seiko is the lead for the third module, and the third module is global business. And so it's a recognition, that module is a recognition that if you're talking about strategy and innovation, again, if you went back 15 or 20 years or in that kind of order, then you might have thought of kind of international business and strategy as separate and separate from innovation. I think these days there's very few organizations that can't think globally in terms of their business. And it doesn't really matter even whether you have a very global supply chain. You are at least highly influenced by global supply chains, macro, environmental, international kinds of things that are going on. If we just, I won't get into this because I'm not gonna get into it, but if you think about the last few weeks or the whole of 2025 and the dynamics that have been occurring in terms of trade, international relations, and so on, there are very few businesses that are not going to be affected by those kinds of dynamics. And so whether you are thinking of yourselves as operating an international business or just affected by it, understanding those dynamics is incredibly important. Mari is, again, someone who has been teaching in this program for a long time. She's a very eminent professor of management studies. And her areas of research include kind of intersections of, she's originally an economist, but we won't kind of abuse her for that too much. And she's been in management for a long time, and she does work on international management, but also professional services, and recently a lot on the intersection of artificial intelligence and professional services, and so along with it, the international side. And then you'll see me for the last module. And the last module is meant to be a kind of integration in some ways of the first three, taking those sets of ideas and bringing them more into the day-to-day and saying, okay, well, if we want to do all those things, what does it look like in practical terms? And so we'll bring it down to more practical kinds of language, but also introduce and kind of dig into some issues around things like dynamic capabilities a little bit more. So that's probably enough on the module leads. I'll tell you a little bit more about the kind of the structures that we're going to look like. So I won't go into depth in this. You'll have it for those slides, but as I said, there's 4 modules: strategy, innovation, globalization, and strategy and action. And you can see some of the lists of topics that are there. Those aren't necessarily comprehensive. Those are just kind of illustrative ideas that are attached to the different modules. So for instance, strategy includes competitive strategy, corporate strategy, M&A, decision making, innovation strategy. You shift focus. It builds on the first, but it shifts focus to be around more around innovation. So Mark and Victor will talk about things particularly like emerging markets and emerging technologies. That'll be a big theme. Not so much focused on trying to understand any particular emerging technology, even including something like AI, which is obviously incredibly important, but trying to situate, if you're trying to understand generative AI as an emerging technology, how do you situate that in a broader set of frameworks and concepts that allow you to not be kind of overwhelmed by the dynamism of it and kind of understand, well, we've seen lots of emerging technologies over the decades and centuries even. How do they play out? What does it look like? How do markets form? How do they reform? How do industries form and so on? The globalization module will look at a number of things. It'll look, on the one hand, from a kind of very macro view in terms of what's going on in the world. How do we understand global, international trends that are affecting trade, supply chains, and so on, international markets? We'll also look at sort of the details of global supply chains and value chains. We'll look at how you manage those value chains. And so whether you're talking about integration or disintegration, or non-market strategies that are affecting, or non-market actors that are affecting your value chains, for instance, whether it's governments or NGOs and so on. And then the last module is mind strategy in action. And it deals a lot with the question of, if you are an organization facing all of these kind of dynamic elements, both in strategy and innovation and globally, how do you build into the organization the capacity to not just make a change, but make change on an ongoing basis? How do you build into it the ability to recognize the need for change, but then also kind of seize those change and harness them in kind of productive ways? There's a piece on the last row I'll just mention, which is the integrative case series. One thing that we've introduced is a case series that integrates across the 4 modules. And so one of the things I said was that each of the 4 modules has a kind of distinct approach, but the AI case series allows participants a way of connecting them a little bit more easily. And so we have a Professor Hanan Al-Hadi, who is a really exceptional person. She's an academic. She's also a very senior executive at Ford Motor Company. She's also a consultant with her own AI consulting business. And she comes in for each of the modules and does a case study with you. And she has this really extraordinary ability to both kind of speak from this very experienced position as a Ford executive and as an academic and as someone who is an alumnus of the program, of the DIPSI program. So she graduated I want to say 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. I can't remember now, but a little while ago. And she loved it, and she wanted to come back and try and kind of contribute to it. And she has just extraordinarily developed, designed this case series, and now delivers it. And it's a really fantastic part of the program. Okay, so I'll tell you a little bit more about now the what the insides of the modules look like, I think. Oh, kind of. I was trying to remember what the next slide looked like. Sorry. Um, so if there's 4 modules. The work that you do is more than the 4 days you're here. And that's either good news or bad news, depending how you look at it, I suppose. Hopefully it's good news. Certainly in terms of learning and pedagogy, the way we think about it is it's a much bigger kind of container than the 4 days that you're here. So it starts with pre-work, which is remote and self-paced for 4 weeks. We release, so if you have a module coming up, and so a couple of weeks ago, there would have been all of the materials released to you, and there would be readings, cases, with a kind of a progress. So on Canvas, our online educational software, Canvas provides a kind of way of walking you through the different assignments or different readings and preparation you need to do. That's really key. And there's probably 2 things I would say about preparation. One is it's kind of a paradox where on the one hand, starting early is important to give yourself time to read through material and not be really rushed. At the same time, when you get into the classroom, virtual classroom for 4 or 5 days, then those 5 days go very quickly. And in a way, you'll want to be able to remember it well enough that you probably need to refresh yourself as you go along. And so there is an advantage of reading ahead of time, but then there's also often a need to kind of reread or refresh yourself as you go into it. The module week is 5 days of, even though they're not full days, they can end up being quite intensive. And so you'll need to think about how you develop a strategy that allows you to kind of get the most out of those 5 days and do whatever you need to do in the background. And so some people take time off, some people don't take time off, some people try and clear their calendar, at least push meetings either ahead or further away to kind of create time for themselves. That's really quite important to do. The students who have really just tried to say, okay, well, I'm going to do all of my work in my regular rhythm and just squish out those 4 hours or 5 hours in the middle of the day, it can be very exhausting to do that. And now you can only do what you can do. All of you have different kinds of calendars, requirements, schedules, and so on. But I'm just kind of warning you that even this first week, you'll find fairly quickly after 2 or 3 days that it's a big ask of you to kind of keep up unless you've created some room for yourself. Now, it's not meant to be, one of the reasons we launched an online program is because not everyone can come to Oxford for 4 or 5 days and just travel multiple times a year and so on. So we recognize that there are probably reasons you're doing this, and we try and accommodate that in terms of the rhythm of it. But at the same time, you'll really need to think about how you manage it for yourself. Okay. And then following the week-long module, there's an assessment for each of the first 3 modules. Each of them will have some kind of assessment that will be not immediately released, but it'll be released a period after the end of the module. And the reason it's not released immediately is actually to give you a break. It's to say, okay, so you've just had a very intensive 5 days. Now take a breath. Catch up with life and family, etc., before we start to ask you for, and again, a somewhat demanding assignment to be done. The first 3 assignments are challenging, but they shouldn't be overwhelming. They're a way to kind of solidify your understanding of the material, sometimes to apply it to your own businesses, but other times asked to apply really just to a case study that the instructors have chosen for you to apply it to. And then the last thing is that the final integrative assignment, which I mentioned at the beginning, which is, excuse me, um, it's the label final integrative assignment is a very considered label. Particularly the integrative part, it's meant to cut across the different modules. But it's also an assignment. It's not a project. It's not a thesis. It's not a dissertation. It's really a strong choice to have you understand that it will be a significant piece of work, but it shouldn't be an overwhelming piece of work. It's something that you will show your fluency and your competency with frameworks across the modules, how they might be combined, they might be used to answer a practical question, but it shouldn't be something that you drown while doing. Okay. And we'll talk a lot more about all of these things as we go along, but just to kind of give you a first kind of look at it. Okay, I'll look at the next module or the next slide. Some key dates. I'm not going to go through these particularly, but they'll be on slides that you'll have. We start quite soon in terms of teaching, and then the assessment. You can see the assessment for it doesn't happen for several weeks after the module occurs. And so there should be a rhythm for you that becomes more manageable in terms of prepare and then participate, take a breath, have the assessment, take a breath, prepare and participate, and so on. And that should be, over the course of the year, it's something you will feel throughout the year, undoubtedly, but it shouldn't be something that ruins your year. It should be something very exciting in your year that you enjoy, and it should be kind of demanding, but not overwhelming. Okay. Okay. Well, look. And so this is, again, you're gonna see a lot of this next week. I'll just give you a very brief touch on it. This is what the typical 5 days will look like. These times are on UK time. We're UK centric, and so we run from 11:30 till 4 o'clock each day with a half an hour break in between. There will be more breaks than that, but those will be slightly at the kind of depending on the rhythm of the instruction, the activity, and so on. So you'll likely have a short break between in the 11:30 to 1:30, for instance, session. That's 2 hours. That's a long time to spend online. Undoubtedly, there'd be like a 5-minute break or sort of bio comfort break, and the same thing in the afternoon, our afternoon. There's also 3 optional office hours, which are really wide open in terms of how you want to use them. They're really to have a discussion with Richard, in this case, Professor Richard Whittington, around the material. If you have questions of what it means, you want to catch up, or how it applies to your work or your organization, or talk to other students about that, it's just an opportunity to do that. And then you can see very well, but you can see it's not just Richard. And so in most of the modules, you have leads, but those won't be the only people you will see. And so, for instance, Olivier Chaboni will be here on Wednesday, who's a fantastic instructor, professor who teaches about behavioral decision making and strategic biases. On the Friday morning, you'll have Yasser Badi with Richard Whittington talking about innovation, and then you'll also have Hanan Alhid. This is going to be updated, but in the afternoon that day. And so typically you'll have the leads plus 2 or 3 other instructors in the week. So you'll not see just those people. Okay.
Okay, perfect, Tom. Thank you very much for this comprehensive introduction for the program. And now I will hand over to Anushka from the program services team. Over to you, Anushka.
You, Sarah. Hi, everyone. It's so lovely to finally put faces to names. I've been corresponding with some of you, but it's nice to see faces now. Lisa and I will be your program managers for this year for the Diploma in Strategy and Innovation. It's really nice to meet you. Can we go to the next slide, please, Sarah?
Sure.
So we're here to sort of help you navigate the slightly complicated Oxford system. It can be a bit overwhelming. It's really exciting. It's really fun, but there are a lot of departments doing a lot of different things. So it's always nice to have one contact person that you know you can go to, and then we can redirect you. So unfortunately, a lot of times you'll ask me questions and I'll say, well, I think this person might be great to respond to this question, which is just to say that there are lots of different teams handling lots of different things. But we are your one-stop solution to get you to these different teams. So a lot of times you may not know who to contact, and you can sort of reach out to Lisa and I, and we can sort of help you find out who's the best person to answer your questions. Just to give you a sense of where we are placed in the larger structure, the wonderful recruitment team you already met, Sarah, you've already met Anna. They sort of bring you into the program, they hand you over to us. You've already met the admissions team who sort of take care of all of the deposits and all of your initial documentation. While you're here throughout the program, we sort of help you navigate a lot of the other aspects of your program. Some of the other teams that you'll meet when you're here are libraries, IT, assessments. All of these people you'll sort of meet next week in your orientation. So don't worry about what are the different teams you have to interact with. We'll all come and have a quick chat. So you'll know who to talk to. And all of this will happen in your orientation session next week. And once your program's over, you have the alumni team who sort of manages a lot of your interactions with the school. But again, and Lisa says this often, so I'm going to borrow her words and say that we're still around. If you need to reach out to us after your program's over, you still can. Yes, can we go to the next slide, please? So what does a program manager do? I've already told you a lot of what we do is really helping you navigate your life here at Oxford whenever you're doing your programs with us, you're in program module week, or if you're off module week and you're trying to understand what's the prep work that you need to do, what are the learnings that you need to make sure you have before you come to your module week. All of that sort of we can help you help guide you with. University policies can be sometimes slightly tricky and slightly complicated, so we can help you navigate those. We can help you coordinate with your class representatives, which is again something we'll talk about once your first module is kind of done and you've gotten to know each other. We'll talk to you about what does it mean to be a class rep, what are the roles that you sort of occupy, that kind of thing. We can't, of course, write your assignments for you. I don't think you want us to. We're not going to be quite as good as you are going to be at these assignments. But other than that, we're around to help you wherever we can. A quick background. I was a student at Oxford before. I've done my master's here, so I also have sort of a lot of intimate knowledge about what does it mean to navigate it as a student. So hopefully that should help me help you a little bit better. And Lisa's been around for several years, and she's a very integral part of the university system. So she's also gotten a lot of experience to help you navigate the system. So please feel free to reach out to us. You already have our email IDs. It is dipsi@sps.ox.ac.uk. You've gotten quite a few emails from us. If you've already paid your deposit and are on the system, you've gotten emails from us about next steps. So you already know how to reach out to us. But yeah, we're here if you need anything. Can we go on to the next slide, please? Lisa's 13 years in July. Well, guess, a decade or more. This is the next step in your process, which is going to be next week. On 27th February, we've arranged an orientation session for everybody. This is just again to get a sense of what can you expect, a little bit more about other teams that you'll interact with. I know Canvas can be a little bit tricky to navigate if it's your first time navigating that virtual learning environment. It's nice to have somebody who's designed the site to give you an understanding of how do you navigate that. So we'll have somebody do that for you. IT can be again slightly tricky, so it's nice to have somebody from the IT team to give you a sense of how do you navigate IT. So don't worry if some of this stuff has been slightly tricky or slightly there's a learning curve to some of the systems that we use at the university, but it's not a very steep learning curve as long as you get an introduction to it. So we'll make sure you get that introduction next week. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, we've already set up IT one-on-one sessions. I've sent around an email to everybody, to your personal email IDs and to your SPS email IDs. So please go and find a way to book a slot onto it in case you have any one-on-one sessions you would like to have. Again, if you're busy, if you feel like you haven't gotten that email yet, let me know. We can also arrange some of these sessions once the module's begun. But ideally, we want you to be as ready as possible before we start on Monday in March, so that you've had access to your pre-readings. Tom's already mentioned this before, but if you haven't done your readings, you can't get much from the program. So it's really, really important that you do your readings, especially your case readings, because we start off from that process. We're trying very hard to make sure that we don't overpopulate your module week. We don't want you to be online all the time. So we want your time with us to be very, very, very useful and impactful. But to do that, it means that you have to have done the pre-reading, so that you're here to have a conversation with each other and you're here to sort of engage. So please try and make sure that all of these logistics are done which give you access to your pre-reading. So again, reach out to me if you have any issues, and I can help you access whatever you need. The timetables are up. So if you've gotten access to your virtual learning environment, you should be able to see your timetables and all of your readings. If there are any questions, you can reach out to me. I think there's one last slide that I want to talk to you about. Can we go to the next one? This is St. Edmund Hall. It's your college. There is a little bit more information about what an associate college is on your Canvas side. We'll talk a little bit more about this as you go along, because again, there's a lot of information to take in, but I just wanted to sort of keep that in mind, that there is a college here called St. Edmund Hall, and that's somewhere that you have associate membership. Thank you. That's all from me. These are launch dates, which you have on your email. It was lovely to meet
Perfect.
you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anushka. That was really helpful. Thank you. Okay, I would like to take a moment to introduce you to your cohort. So please note this information is still evolving as we continue to process and consider last-minute applications. We anticipate a diverse class of about 18 to 20 students, bringing together perspectives from across the world. This diversity will enrich discussions and enhance collaborative learning throughout the program. So you can see here where everyone in the class so far joining us from all around the world. Okay. Okay, and sorry. Here also on this slide, you will find selection of organizations and job titles represented within the class. As you can see, we have participants from a broad range of sectors, each contributing unique experiences and expertise. The average age of this cohort is 45 years, with an average of 20 years professional experience. And now we will move to some speed networking. So now I would like to give each of you the opportunity to introduce yourselves and get to know your fellow classmates. So you will go into breakout rooms, and you will have about 7 minutes. Please take a moment to share with your group your name, where you are from, the sector and company you work in, and what motivated you to apply for this program. So yeah, if you can just give my colleague a minute, and then you will go into breakout rooms. Everyone, you found that useful, and you enjoyed that short networking opportunity. But I just want to say that you will have a similar opportunity again during the orientation session next week. But yeah, today I just want to give you a little bit more information about the program and what to also expect. So in addition to your core modules, we offer optional workshops that will be delivered online between your modules. These workshops are open to all diploma students, providing an excellent opportunity to connect with students from other diploma programs. And here on the screen, you can find the workshop dates, and you will be notified in advance about these sessions. The workshops are designed to provide industry insights and emerging trends, with some sessions also focusing on career progression. We highly encourage you to take advantage of these additional learning opportunities. Okay. If you would like to get involved with the school and stay informed about our events, we encourage you to join Side Business School's LinkedIn page. This is an open group where you will receive updates on the school's events, initiatives, and news. Additionally, some wider university events are shared there as well. Joining this group is a great way to stay engaged with the community and expand your network. On the right, you can see Side Business School's website as well, and on the event section, you can find out about our upcoming events online and also in person. Here are the next steps to ensure a smooth onboarding process for you. If you have not paid your deposit, please do so as soon as possible. Once your deposit is received, you will be required to complete an onboarding survey and submit your university card form. Please ensure that you stay up to date with all communications from both the admissions team and the program team to complete your enrollment successfully. These steps on the screen will help ensure that you are fully prepared for Module 1 starting on Monday, 3rd of March. And yeah, of course, please don't hesitate to reach out to Anushka, Lisa, or I if you have any questions about these steps here.
Thank you. Just one last word from me is, which you've made a fantastic decision. This really, I mean this from the bottom of my heart. This is a great program. I love teaching in it. I love being associated with it. The support staff you have associated with it are amazing. So if you have any kinds of questions, concerns along the way, reach out to anybody. Anybody you have their contact with can put you in contact with somebody else. Even if they can't answer your question, we can put you in contact with somebody who can. So don't hesitate because you're not sure if it's the right person.
Okay, perfect. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And I'm looking forward to you joining the program on Monday, 3rd of March. In the meantime, if you need anything, if you have any questions, please let me or my colleagues know. We are very happy to help. And yeah, we hope you found today's session helpful and informative. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
guys. Bye.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.